102, take two.
The French.
The American remake. Wherever there's any successful foreign film, you can bet there's some bloated Hollywood executive rubbing his fat, greasy fingers together and saying to himself, you know what? I think we can do better. From Let the Right One In to Old Boy to The Departed, the results have varied from pretty good to why would you even do this? Do we really need a remake of Parasite? What's wrong with the one we already have? When it comes to the American remake, there's always one in particular that gets brought up as standing shoulder to shoulder with the film that inspired it, and that's The Magnificent Seven, adapted from Seven Samurai. Directed by John Sturges and featuring an all-star cast led by Yul Brynner, The Magnificent Seven has long been celebrated as a hallmark of the Western genre, spawning 3 sequels, a short-lived television show, and even its own remake in 2016. That said, and while still appreciating some aspects of the film on their own merits, I think in many ways The Magnificent Seven falls short of the blueprint established by Seven Samurai, both rounding off the edges of Samurai's human complexity, but also coming up short as an action movie. Before getting into that though, here's what I think works about the movie. The change in setting and film formats obviously goes a long way toward the movie establishing its own identity. The setting, but also the charisma of the actors. Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson. They're tough, they're cool, they've got sex appeal. While I don't think you can necessarily say either film's music is any better than the others, different films in different settings call for different music, I do think Elmer Bernstein's main theme from The Magnificent Seven has lived on as the more standout musical score. With all that out of the way, here's where I think the movie falls short when compared to its source material. For starters, there's too much that feels haphazardly bolted on from the original. Characters, scenarios, and lines of dialogue, stripped of their original context and watered down into bland homage. The villagers, for one, have been oversimplified, reduced to flimsy caricature, where in Seven Samurai, desperation drives the villagers to suspicion, to murder, to beating their own daughters. In The Magnificent Seven, the villagers are more or less angels, Steinbeckian paragons of quiet, earthy humility. The village elder refuses to leave his house, but unlike in Seven Samurai, there's never any consequence for it. The men of the village hide the women from the gunfighters, but again, unlike in Seven Samurai, there's none of the more pointed commentary on the sexes in times of war. In examining the differences between the two films, it might be worth talking a little bit about race, and how the social preoccupations of an ethnically homogeneous Japan might differ from those of a post-Ellis Island America. Take the gunfighters, for instance. We've got Yul Brynner playing a Cajun, Charles Bronson playing a half-Irish, half-Mexican, Horst Buchholz playing a Mexican, actors from unique and varied backgrounds playing characters from unique and varied backgrounds, all coming together in service of the same goal. Now let's compare a scene that both films have in common but which plays out much differently between the two, the scene where we're first introduced to our heroes. In Seven Samurai, the older, more experienced Kanbei, our analog to Yul Brynner in The Magnificent Seven, is tasked with rescuing a child from a thief holed up in a barn. He shaves his head and disguises himself as a monk. He gets the thief to let down his guard, kills him, and saves the child. From this scene, we can infer at least 3 things about his character. We can infer that he's brave, that he's capable, and that he's clever. Whether his actions are moral or not is almost beside the point. The audience might even infer a certain unscrupulousness in his willingness to deceive. Meanwhile, in The Magnificent Seven, the conflict comes about because of an undertaker, under fear of reprisal from some of the town, refusing to bury an Indian up on Boot Hill, leaving it up to Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen to get the job done. This sequence also tells us 3 things about our heroes, but with one key difference. The scene tells us these are men who are brave, who are capable, but most importantly, it tells us these are men who are moral, and in a way that only an American film could, by showing us that they're not racist. Not only are they not racist, but they're also keenly temperate in doling out justice, warding off the bigots on the hill with simple flesh wounds to the hand and the shoulder. The stakes then are more social or sentimental than they are immediately material. They're noble sentiments, and yet at times I think the film ends up trading sentimentality for complexity. I have to wonder if a difference in priorities between Japanese and American culture, if an element of American racial sensitivity wasn't part of a reluctance to make the Mexican villagers in The Magnificent Seven as flawed, as human, as they were in Seven Samurai. Then again, maybe there just wasn't enough time. There's bound to be sacrifices when trying to condense a 3.5 hour movie into just over 2. The romance, of course, gets a Hollywood makeover. In Seven Samurai, the romance between the young samurai Katsuhiro and the village girl Shino ends with her rebuffing him. Two people from different worlds, destined to remain apart. In The Magnificent Seven, meanwhile, the girl looks wistfully after the young gunfighter as he rides away, until inevitably he turns back and decides to stay with her in the village, happily ever after. Gone is that added sense of disillusionment in the young man's pursuit of love and glory. Gone is that painfully gained wisdom and maturity in realizing that not all that glitters is gold. The young gunfighter in The Magnificent Seven, Chico, is in fact a conglomeration of two characters from Seven Samurai, the young and idealistic Katsuhiro and the rugged wild card Kikuchiyo, a kind of Frankenstein creation where the two halves never quite add up to a whole. There's a scene taken from Seven Samurai where Chico wades into a river to catch a fish with his bare hands, but without the flea-bitten wolfman charm of Toshiro Mifune, there's none of what made that scene so memorable in the first place. I think part of the problem is there is too little contrast between Chico and the other gunfighters. He's neither his own new character, nor given the full depth of the characters he's derived from. Where I think The Magnificent Seven really falls short compared to Seven Samurai is in the final confrontation with the bandits. Seven Samurai is a war film. Most of the samurai are professional soldiers. There's a lot of time devoted to strategy and planning, and the success or failure of the battle hinges on how well that strategy is executed. In The Magnificent Seven, they just build a few walls, let all the bandits in, and then jump out and surprise them. Again, in translating Seven Samurai for an American audience, heroes defined by not just their strength and their bravery, but their wits and their intelligence, are reduced to broad cowboy archetypes who get by on sheer gumption, moral certitude, and a preternatural skill with a pistol. There's nothing wrong with that. That pretty much describes the Western genre in a nutshell. But then why adapt Seven Samurai at all if any other story could have satisfied the same archetypes? I think The Great Escape, also directed by John Sturges and featuring Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, and James Coburn, I think that film does a better job of capturing the spirit of Seven Samurai, in no small part because it has a life of its own, has its own cinematic identity. Another problem with the final battle is the way in which the structure of The Magnificent Seven has been changed from Seven Samurai. In Seven Samurai, the first act is the farmers recruiting the samurai, the second is planning for the battle and the characters bonding with one another, and the third is the battle. The way The Magnificent Seven changes this is after the initial confrontation with the gunfighters and the bandits. The movie grinds to a halt, and the audience is held hostage so that Charles Bronson can bond with some kids, so that Steve McQueen can talk to this guy, so that the love story can trundle on. It's as if what was once the second act in Seven Samurai has been taken apart and sandwiched between the third act in The Magnificent Seven. It's an attempt to further flesh out the gunfighters, but it comes at the expense of maintaining any sort of tension or excitement. Again, some of it might be chalked up to trying to condense the story, but the scattershot way in which some pieces of samurai are grafted on while others are ejected sometimes plays less like a great cover of a classic song and more like bad karaoke. Where The Magnificent Seven deviates the most from Seven Samurai, where it really attempts carving out its own path story-wise, is the moment where the gunfighters go on the offensive against the bandits. Where in Seven Samurai, the men sneak into the bandits' hideout and burn down their camp while they're asleep, losing one of their own in the process. The Magnificent Seven takes the scene as an opportunity to change things up, by having the gunfighters arrive to find the camp empty, then returning to the village to find it taken over by the bandits. It's a nice curveball, putting our heroes on the back foot like this, but again, without very many scenes of planning or strategy, all we're left is a typical Western shoot-'em-up. I think The Magnificent Seven needed something like the odd stick of dynamite or a cannon on the hill to add some dramatic highs and lows, something that procedurally changes the stakes instead of just the one wholesale turning of the tables. My final gripe with The Magnificent Seven is in the ending, which is an almost perfect synergy of all my other problems with the film. At the end of Seven Samurai, the battle has been won, the bandits defeated, and yet there seems to be a deep disconnect between our heroes and the villagers. The villagers sing while they harvest their fields, seemingly ambivalent to the samurai as they mourn those of their number lost in the fight. As the samurai leave the village, there's no fond farewell, no tearful words of gratitude. It's here where Katsuhiro is rebuffed by Shino. It's almost as if the villagers resent the samurai in some way, resent their relation to violence at all. It seems there's no place for a soldier in peacetime. As the samurai walk away, Kanbei remarks, "In the end, we lost this battle too. The victory belongs to those peasants, not to us." Even as heroes, the samurai are alienated from their countrymen. Meanwhile, the Magnificent Seven attempts to allude to a similar complexity, but it's neutered by an overriding appeal towards sentimentality. The village elder, backed by the farmers, tells the gunfighters they could stay in the village if they wanted. The old man then puts a more romantic, wistful sheen on the gunfighters' place in the world, saying they're like the wind sweeping over the land, that there's a season for all things, then parlaying that into part of Kanbei's dialogue from Seven Samurai.
Only the farmers have won.
First the old man, then Yul Brynner echoes that same bit of dialogue.
The old man was right. Only the farmers won. We lost. We always lose.
I think the whole ending softens the blow of the dialogue. How alienated can our heroes really claim to be if they arrive at the idea collaboratively with a kindly old man who just a moment ago offered them a home? It's like the film is groping through the dark for the themes and the ideas presented in Seven Samurai, but is only able to discern the rough edges. Or again, like the themes are haphazardly bolted on, where the film would rather tend towards sentimentality. Chalk it up to the Hays Code, chalk it up to an American squeamishness about race or the misguided instincts of the filmmakers, but here at the end we have more of what detracts from the film as a whole. An attempt at trying to have your cake and eat it too, of applying a rose-colored tinge to key complexities of Seven Samurai. While the film has its charms in a great ensemble cast, in great music, and in an enduring Western iconography, I just don't think that The Magnificent Seven is as good as Seven Samurai.
Ah, the French